The Sonora Desert, stretching thousands of miles from Mexico into Arizona. It's a sparsely populated Wild West landscape, ideal for bringing drugs into the U.S. or entering without documentation. It is here in this high desert one can find out what's really happening at the border. I'm Mary Rogers. To learn more about our nation's immigration policies, 18 of us Presbyterians from Columbia, South Carolina, went to Mexico in January 2020. We board our flight with mixed emotions. We're excited, we're curious, and we're a little bit apprehensive. Mexico is not the safest place. By mid-afternoon, we were in Tucson, praying in the parking lot of a Mexican restaurant for wisdom and guidance in the week ahead. Then we head south to the border town of Douglas, Arizona. Our first stop, U.S. side of the massive wall. We talk about how we as Christians are expected to welcome the wandering stranger. And we stare at the razor wire and the unmistakable message it brings. Just outside Douglas, the big wall ends, and while there is still a barrier, it is not nearly as imposing. This fence is intended to stop vehicles. The plastic water bottles littering the Mexican side suggest it does not stop people. Finally, as the sun is setting, we drive toward the point of entry into Mexico and our home for the next 5 days, Agua Prieta. The following morning, a Sunday, we gather to worship at a small Presbyterian church, El Lirio de los Valles. Worship is passionate and informal. At the end of the service, worshipers congratulate everyone who had a birthday the preceding month, even Bob Brearley. Our visit is coordinated and hosted by a Presbyterian border ministry, Frontera de Cristo. It is led by the Reverend Mark Adams.
I'm a small-town Southern boy.
Adams is from Clover, South Carolina. We meet with him and his wife Miriam at their home in Agua Prieta. Adams came here 21 years ago, and he vividly remembers a Bible study at the home of Miriam's parents. The group discussed the book of John, which Mark says he had studied but never really understood until then.
First person that spoke said, well, lo que me llamó la atención es que el verbo se hizo carne y habitó entre nosotros. What called my attention is that the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And then he said, God knows what it's like to be far from home.
In Agua Prieta, Frontera de Cristo supports partnerships that include a community center and school, a drug rehabilitation program, a vocational training center, and a cooperative for coffee growers. One of the most important partnerships is CAME. All immigrants seeking asylum at the Douglas Port of Entry must come through the Centro de Atención al Migrante Exodus. Inside, the pictures on the wall depict the dangers of crossing Mexico. This is Gael, an 8-month-old who steals the heart of Laura Covington. Gael's family fled their Mexican town with nothing but the clothes on their backs after a gang kidnapped his mother's brother. Of all the things we saw and experienced in Mexico, the children at CAME were the most powerful. We're still haunted by the images of 2 little girls clinging to one of the hosts. We were asked not to photograph them. The story of the 2 girls, ages 6 and 9, shows the human cost of our nation's immigration policy. The girl's mother had passed a preliminary screening that established that the family had a credible cause to claim asylum. In the past, the woman and the children would have been able to stay in the U.S. However, under a new program, the Migrant Protection Protocols, the family was returned to Mexico to await their next hearing. In November, the mother was kidnapped, and no one knows if the little girls will ever see their mother again.
So our nation are taking folks who are fleeing extreme violence and are wanting to access the legal process for asylum and have implemented the Migrant Protection Protocol. And it's all about making the process more dangerous and to increase longer, to increase the suffering and the pain, to be a deterrent. Because we as a nation have put no room in the inn.
To learn more about the challenges migrants face, we head out of Agua Prieta and into the desert. We want to see and experience what they might endure as they journey to the U.S. border. Leaving the highway, we encounter some real cowboys. And we encounter mud, and that is a problem.
So we saw the bus in front of us brake or go into reverse, and so we braked, and then our back tires slid into the mud, and you know, the rest was history. We got stuck. So feeling better now, got some more confidence, stress levels down again, but we'll see. Apparently we're going quite a ways and there are more of these, so you might see us stuck again.
Later, we leave the vans and continue on foot. On the move, we encounter a member of a local drug cartel. We do not have a picture of him. The man is in the desert to collect a toll, reportedly $500, from anyone who hopes to cross into the U.S. Our guide explains that we are a church group and the cartel member lets us pass. About 20 minutes later, we reach the wall. We learn about the hazards of the desert, and we find out the wall has gates. On this day, they are closed, but we are told they sometimes are open to let animals and anyone else pass through. Afterward, we gather at the Tree of Life. It's called that because in the past, water and food have been left here for migrants crossing the desert. It's a dangerous journey.
Gerson Samoyoa.
Back in the U.S., Mark Adams leads a vigil for those who have died in the desert, 320 of them just in this county.
No identificado. Presente.
Some will never be known.
No identificado.
Presente.
Agua Prieta is a poor community. Many roads are unpaved, dogs run free, trash litters the landscape, but that's not all of the story. One night, we come to a modest Agua Prieta home. This is Ada Casimiros cooking tortillas for us on a 55-gallon oil drum. Ada taught Edie McNeish and others how to do it. We ate so well in Agua Prieta. This is chili colorada. The smaller dish is cactus. Our experiences in Agua Prieta make us want to do something, and as the week was drawing to a close, we had a chance to visit another Frontero de Cristo partnership. Dougla Prieta Works provides vocational training and promotes economic self-sufficiency. One area is horticulture, and we do our part for a good harvest this year. On our last day, we gather at the wall. In contrast to the razor wire on the U.S. side, artists have turned the steel fence into intricate murals. We hold hands and listen to scripture.
Let the little children come to me. Do not stop them.
As we walk to the border checkpoint, we pass across declaring we are all immigrants. In the distance, we can see a green tent, which symbolizes how we treat those seeking asylum. The U.S. now limits the number of people who can apply. And asylum seekers never know when their name may be called for an interview. If an immigrant is not at the point of entry when their name is called, they lose their spot on the list. That's why Frontera de Cristo and its partners put up this crude shelter. As immigrants rise to the top of the list, they move into the tent, so they will be here when their names are called. The tent does not have heat or running water. As we walked by, we talked to a Mexican couple with their infant daughter. They have been waiting in the tent for 1 month. Meanwhile, drugs and people continue to enter the country illegally. We were told that the cartel removed this section of the fence so a vehicle could drive into Douglas. We leave Mexico in our muddy vans. We're angry. We want to know what we can do when we get home.
Well, Jesus was about crossing borders. And this is a border. Sometimes it's easier to cross this border, even with the fear that exists, than the borders that exist in Colombia. And so what are the borders in Colombia that separate you from your brothers and sisters that you haven't met yet?
We have so much to remember from our experiences. The Christian hospitality and the delicious meals, the challenges of Google Translate, time spent together. We learned a great deal at the border, thanks to Frontera de Cristo. Muchas gracias for what you gave to us, 18 missionaries from Columbia, South Carolina.
Cada celulita de mi cuerpo está bien.